When I tell you I have no idea what my book of the year is, we're going to figure this out together. Hey everyone, welcome back to Andrew's Wizardly Reads, and as always guys, I'm Andrew, and today guys, we are doing the top 10 reads of last year. But before we get into this, please do me a favor, like this video and subscribe to the channel, as it does help the channel grow. And you can check the description box down below for all of my, well, social media links, including the Patreon and the Discord if you want to check those out and support the channel. With all of that nonsense out of the way, of course I'm going to have some honorable mentions here, because how could I not have some honorable mentions? In fact, I have one that was going to be an honorable mention, which got moved to a top 10 of the year for various reasons. Now, usually most of us here on BookTube will say, hey, an author can't have more than one entry here. I'm not doing that nonsense, because I actually disqualified a bunch of amazing books and moved them to honorable mentions because their follow-ups weren't all that strong. So the book itself was great, but I felt that the follow-ups to that said book, which is in a series, was relatively weak. So we're going to start off here with the honorable mentions, and then we're going to go into the top 10 of 2024. So the first honorable mention, the reason this is being made an honorable mention is the follow-up was so bad that I unhauled the book that I absolutely loved, because I'm weird, and if I don't like the entire series, I don't just keep the book I liked on my shelf. Space constraints are a thing. Anyway, I'm weird. This book is Going Postal by Sir Terry Pratchett, and Going Postal is a masterpiece and can be read without reading the sequels, but I did read the sequels in the Moist von Litvig trilogy, and oh my goodness, Making Money, its follow-up, is a particularly poor showing. It just felt like recycled ideas and kind of phoning it in, and it just kind of made me feel worse about Going Postal. So Going Postal is absolutely fantastic. It's about discovering self, discovering a mission in life, being put in charge of something that nobody thinks can succeed, and absolutely pulling it off. We get some of the best veterinary in this series. We get to really explore Moist, who is a con man who's been put in charge of the Postal Service in Ankh-Morpork, and Ankh-Morpork's Postal Service hasn't delivered a letter in like 40 years, and so there's just mountains of mail at the post office, and Moist has to come in and sort this out. It's phenomenal, but it gets an honorable mention purely because Making Money, honestly, its follow-up was just such a poor showing. The next honorable mention is going to be The Fourth Monkey by J.D. Barker. Again, the follow-ups kind of let this one down, but if you wanted basically like a hard crime novel mixed with Leave It to Beaver, you're gonna kind of get something like this. It's fantastic hard crime, it's pulse-pounding, and just there's a kind of separate storyline here told in a journal that is kind of recounting an almost Leave It to Beaver style of uprising, which is an old school, like, if you don't know what Leave It to Beaver is, I think it's from like the 60s. It was a sitcom from the 60s of like a gee shucks and you go get 'em sport type of just like really wholesome upbringing. But like if you mix that with some serial killing, that's kind of what you get here in that journal area. It's wild. It's a great just kind of mix of styles, and for that reason I loved The Fourth Monkey. And then of course the serial killing that's happening in the modern day here is absolutely phenomenal. So this is an honorable mention for the year. And then another honorable mention, the last honorable mention, is Kagan the Damned by Jonathan Mayberry. This is, of course, book one in the Kagan the Damned trilogy. And the reason this is an honorable mention is this is like, I've been told that this is really grimdark. It didn't hit me as grimdark. This is just dark sword and sorcery with kind of cosmic horror. We do have those like Cthulhu mythos in here. Jonathan Mayberry does bring in Cthulhu. He does bring in a few of the elder gods as well, and then we kind of mix this in a far-flung future on Earth, like 50,000 years in the future, where we've reverted back to swords and queens and empires and stuff like that, and horses. And the elder god mythos have kind of pushed through, and here they're real, and there's just all sorts of great stuff of like the fall of empire and revenge, and just I loved Kagan the Damned. Son of the Poison Rose felt a little bit bloated, felt like we were trying to throw in a bunch of extra stuff, and for that reason, this kind of just gets the honorable mention. All right, now on to what you're actually here for, which is the top 10. And I'm going to tell you what, I don't actually know what my book of the year is, but here's what we're going to do. We're going to feel this out. So the final book that I talk about is going to be my book of the year. We're going to say that right there. That's going to be the book of the year. So if you want to know what the book of the year is, watch to the end, because we're going to discover it together. We're on this journey together, my friends. Starting out this list, we've got Ogres by Adrian Tchaikovsky. And initially, like, I wasn't going to include this, but A, this is a novella, and B, like, I don't tend to like Tchaikovsky's novels all that much, despite the fact that I think he's a fantastic writer. I like a few of his novels here and there, but then, like, when it goes into series mode, I feel like his standalones are stronger than his series, and this is a standalone novella, which basically means it's the best of both worlds for me. This is told in second person, and the twists and the turns that you get within this story are amazing. In just this little package, there's at least 2 twists that absolutely knocked my socks off. I highly recommend you read Ogres. The main character is just kind of like, what's his name? Torquell? Yeah, Torquell. Torquell, he's this kind of up-and-coming ogre. No, he's not an ogre. This up-and-coming young man who basically, like, he makes a mistake and he goes on the run and he joins this band of misfits, and then his life kind of gets redefined through others, and he takes on this role, and then there's just, I don't know, there's so much in here to unpack in such a short and small package that this is a powerhouse of fantasy that Adrian Tchaikovsky has achieved. I really enjoyed reading this year. Then we've got, this is the author that's going to appear here twice. We've got Finders Keepers by Stephen King. And it's funny because, if you recall, I DNF'd this very early or very late last year or early this year. I was like, I'm not feeling this, and I walked away from it. I was like, I feel like I know what's going to happen. This is all really predictable. And then, like, I came back to it 3 months later because I was like, maybe I just wasn't in the mood for that. And it was just, the whole reading experience was just, like, it was fantastic. It was gripping. It was like, even though you could probably see where some of the things were going to happen, it was still like, geez, that was intense. And then the reason this is kind of lower on the list is because this is book 2 in the Bill Hodges trilogy, but Bill Hodges didn't really need to be here. He doesn't really serve a whole lot of purpose. He doesn't even appear until 45% into the book. So it's air quotes Bill Hodges trilogy, but it kind of just sets up book 3. But again, I like book 3, which is why this does make the list. So very good series, the Bill Hodges series, and I really enjoyed Finders Keepers. It's about this, basically, this guy goes in and he becomes obsessed with a writer, and he breaks in. This writer has since retired from the public life. He hasn't been publishing, but he's still writing. And this guy in the 70s breaks into his house, kills him, and steals these journals, gets caught for a completely unrelated crime, and goes away for life, or for around 42 years. So he buries the journals and buries the money before he gets caught. And basically, a young boy in 2008, whose father was affected by the Mercedes event in book 1, he finds these journals, he finds the cash, and then this killer gets released from prison, and he's still obsessed. And we kind of take off from there. It's fantastic. It's exquisite. All right, the next book we're going to talk about. We're going to do... No, I said that was one of my favorite books of all time. And I still stand by that. That book really spoke to me. We're going to do Skeleton Crew. We're going to do a Stephen King back-to-back. This is another Stephen King where I walked away because there is a particularly bad story in here. I forget the name of the story. It's like something about, like, Here There Be Tigers. Yeah, so the second story, because it says introduction. The second story in this collection is particularly bad. It feels like a fever dream. I don't really understand what Stephen King was going for when he wrote that story. So I walked away from the collection after that. And then I kind of came back, I'm going to say 6 months later. So I probably tried reading this in 2023. No, it was this year. No, I tried reading it in 2023. No. How did those... Because I read The Mist. And I have it marked on my Goodreads that I read Mist instead of Skeleton Crew. So I read The Mist, which is the novella, which I actually thoroughly enjoyed The Mist. And then I walked away after Here There Be Tigers, and I was just like, oh, maybe I'll just say I read The Mist, and then that'll be good enough. And then I kind of came back 6 months after just like letting Here There Be Tigers be kind of just there in my brain. And then the rest of this book was just a powerhouse of short stories. We've got the monkey, which you can see here on the cover. Oh, it's so creepy. It was super, super creepy. This is King at his best. Mrs. Todd's Shortcut. I love Mrs. Todd's Shortcut. It was The Raft. Oh my goodness, The Raft was really good. I mean, there's just so... Uncle Otto's Truck is in here. Uncle Otto's Truck is really good. There's just a ton of really great stories in Skeleton Crew, and I'm really glad I came back and I gave this one another shot. So, yes, we've got that one. Then we've got... Ooh, okay, what's next? So we've got King. That's in contention. I think here is where it starts getting really murky. Man, I'm going to hold up one that I read in December. We have got Bernard Cornwell's The Last Kingdom. This is fantastic. I believe this is called the Saxon Saga. We follow Uhtred of Bettenberg. Basically, he's abducted by the Danes in a battle when he's a very young boy, and basically the Danes have invaded England, and the Saxons are trying to rebuff the Danes. It's not going well. Uhtred is kind of taken captive because he entertains Ragnar, who is this kind of chief in the kind of Danish military, or the Danish hierarchy, and he's basically raised as a Dane, and then like he kind of has these conflicting loyalties between being a Saxon, like, you know, a born Saxon, but being raised Danish, and he has conflicting loyalties, and he gets involved in machinations and politics and combat and all sorts of stuff like that, and this was really good. This was a great start to a series. I'm actually getting ready to read book number 2 here in the new year, and I hope to finish up this series this year, so that's how much I really enjoyed this. If the rest of the series maintains this level of quality, very good. This is historical fiction, by the way. Very, very, very good. I think we are now almost halfway through the list, and I'm going to definitively say that the next on the list is Ray Bradbury's Dandelion Wine. And essentially, this is a short story collection, sort of. It's set in the town, I believe it's called Greenwood, or Greenwood's is near where I live. I think it's Greenfield is where Bradbury has kind of set this up. And we follow this young boy at the start of summer and the magic that we kind of feel at the beginning of summer. And this book will speak to people at different stages of life, because there are POVs of people who are in their middle years, POVs of those who are kids and what's important to them, and then we follow POVs who are in the last days of their lives and what is magical to them. There's so much to unpack in Dandelion Wine, and it is one of Ray Bradbury's best. I really, really enjoyed this. In fact, I have an autographed copy of it. I love this book. This is so incredibly good. And I can definitely see this being one of those books that I revisit multiple times throughout my life, and just have a fantastic time reading it. So yes, there's this one. Now we are into 1, 2, 3, 4, the top 5. And I'm going to say that next up we have got Discovery. This one was going to be an honorable mention because it doesn't even come out until May of 2025, but I got to read/do a kind of edit on Discovery. This is by J.A.J. Minton. This is John, Amy, and Jacob Minton, a writing family. You might know them better as Talking Story. And this book was just a fantastic way to end my year. This is one of the last books I physically read in 2024. And essentially, we've got a discovery of a cosmic being, of what I assume at this point is an eldritch horror, and what that does to the human race, the frenzy, the collapse of society as we know it, the truths that we held to be true may not be true, and everything that goes into that, the discovery of this being, society collapses. We've got all these people who are being moved like chess pieces on a board to kind of, well, combat the sleeping one. And I don't know, I loved Discovery so much. There's some cosmic horror, there's some kind of psychedelic stuff, there's some horror elements. It's fantastic. It's a great coming together of these characters. And I really, really, really enjoyed this. And I cannot wait for you guys to be able to get your hands on it come, I believe, May of 2025 is when it is currently slated for release. So Discovery lands right here in the middle of my top 10 of the year, or top 10 books of the year. And I read I should state this, I read about 120, I believe, 134 books in 2024. And this makes the middle of my top 10. All right, moving right along from there. Oh gosh, we're gonna hold up Horns right here. This is my Levidian Press edition of Horns by Joe Hill. I really got into Joe Hill this last year, and that would be because of 20th Century Ghosts. And then after 20th Century Ghosts, I read Horns. I could have included 20th Century Ghosts on this list, but we're going to talk about Horns because we've got Ignatius, and basically Ig is on a bender. It's the 1-year anniversary when we start this book of the gruesome death of the love of his life, his girlfriend, and everybody thinks that he is guilty of this crime. And he has proclaimed his innocence, despite the fact that, like, a lot of mysterious things happened that make people think he's even more guilty. And basically he wakes up on the day after the 1 year, and he's got these protuberances on his forehead, and he finds that he's got horns. In fact, if we can get you can see that this is kind of Ig, and these are his horns. And basically, as he kind of goes out about his day, trying to figure out what to do about these horns, people start confessing their deepest, darkest secrets to him. And it's wild. He doesn't know why this is happening. It kind of freaks him out a little bit. But as the story progresses, he's like, oh, I can kind of use this to try and figure out what happened to my girlfriend. And so that's what he does. He goes on a mission to uncover the truth. We also do flashbacks to when he was young and when his girlfriend was still alive. Fantastic story. I really, really enjoyed Horns. It was absolutely, absolutely amazing. And then we've got the top 3. All right, I knew it would always be you 3 here. Okay, we're gonna go coming in at number 3. We've got The Tomb by F. Paul Wilson. I knew this was going to be a contender, and this reminded me of one of my favorite books growing up that I read, and that was Douglas Preston and Lincoln Child's Relic. Relic is basically like trapped in a location with a monster. And this kind of expands here in The Tomb, where we've got monsters, but they're citywide, and we don't even really learn about them until, like, people have been disappearing. And here we've got Jack. Jack is a fixer for people who can afford his services. Recently, his girlfriend found out what he did, and it kind of freaked her out because she didn't know he was leading this secret life. She felt like she didn't know him. She breaks up with him, and then all of a sudden, like, she needs his help because her family is imperiled. And so she turns to Jack, who she thinks can help solve this issue for him. And we go on this epic, awesome adventure. I've got a special edition of this, which I should have held up, but it might have confused you because that one's called Rikoshi, which this book was initially titled The Last Rikoshi. And then Tor came in and was like, let's call it The Tomb. So when it was reprinted in special edition, F. Paul Wilson renamed it The Last Rikoshi. So this is Adversary Cycle, book number 2. I'm actually currently reading Adversary Cycle, book number 1. But this is Repairman Jack, number 1. This is where Jack first appears. And I'm excited to get into more Repairman Jack. I've actually got pretty much, I'd say 70% of the series already in mass market paperback. I'm here for it. Jack was awesome. There's not a whole lot of magic. It's not quite an urban fantasy, mainly because Jack isn't magical, but he is interacting with these supernatural beings. Fantastic stuff here. Definitely love The Tomb. So now we have got the last 2 books to talk about. And I think taking the number 2 spot is going to be Iron Prince by Bryce O'Connor and Luke Chemolenko. This is Warformed, Stormweaver number 1. We follow Raiden Ward, and this book looks big, but I took this book down in about 2 to 3 days. I couldn't put it down. It's entertaining. It's got fantastic found family. It's got awesome combat. It is a little bit on the lit RPG side, But let me tell you what, this thing is an absolute delight. What Ray goes through, essentially, he wants to join the military, and so he has to take this test to qualify for a CAD, a combat assistant device. And basically, based on the type of CAD you get and the rankings and the stats that your CAD has, depends on what kind of school you can get into. And basically, he wants to go to the Galen's Institute, but he's been sickly his whole life. He doesn't quite meet their physical parameters and stuff like that. And then he gets a CAD with garbage stats. Like, they're all 0 stats, except for one, which is incredibly rare. And this gets him into Galen's. But he is bottom of the rung. Nobody thinks he deserves to be there. The stat that he has is secret. Only one person knows what's going on. And basically, he has to fight his way up through the ranks while constantly getting stronger and stronger. And this is so incredibly good. So yes, Iron Prince takes the number 2 spot. And if you've been following me anywhere throughout the year, I think you all know what takes the number 1 spot here. And we have got Howard Andrew Jones, Lord of a Shattered Land, as my book of 2024. This is, again, almost another short story collection. This is sword and sorcery, but with a modern spin on it. We follow Hanavar, this older general of a conquered land. Basically, when we start this book, he is out to drift at sea, and he washes up on an island after his land, his home, has been conquered by basically a nation that he has been at war with for years. And they kind of just surprise attack, wipe out his city. And you would think that that would make somebody incredibly vengeful. And he is hurt. He is broken. But he wants to save the remnant of his people. And so he goes on these mini adventures, rescuing people where he can, making allies. And basically, because everybody thinks he's dead, this kind of ghost story about him has popped up in his enemy's homeland. And they are scared of him. They are on the hunt for him. Despite the fact that people don't believe he's actually really alive. And that is to his benefit. Each one of these stories is basically, or each one of these chapters, I should say, is a self-contained story. So it almost reads like a short story collection. Each chapter is a new adventure, moving the storyline forward. And it's just, I don't know, there's some cosmic horror elements in here. Hanavar is just such a compelling and convincing and great character. I really, really enjoyed Lord of a Shattered Land. If you have not picked this up, the trilogy is basically complete as it sits right now. Unfortunately, the author was diagnosed with terminal cancer this year, and I think it was initially planned to be a 5 or 7 book series, but I have been told that book number 3, Lord, I think of a Shattered Mountain? No, Lord of the Mountain or something like that, whatever book number 3 is called, is a conclusion. You can take that as trilogy complete, main arc over. So that is my top 10 books of the year. Taking it away, Lord of Shattered Land, Howard Andrew Jones, Hanavar Chronicles, number 1. Fantastic, fantastic book. This is all I've really got for today, guys. I hope you are doing well. Please let me know in the comments down below what your top 10 books of the year are, if you feel like sharing. And that's all we've really got for today, guys. I hope you're doing well. Till next time, peace out. Stay magical. Bye. And as always, I want to give a huge thank you to my patrons. Thank you for supporting my passion and my hobby. It means the world to me.